Hi, this is Holly Ayala with the Finney County Convention and Visitors Bureau. Today we are at the Finney County Historical Museum. I am joined with Steve Quakenbush, the Executive Director here at the museum. Thank you so much for having us.
Well, glad to have you in. Thank you very much.
Today we are in the True Crime exhibit. Most people though want to know, how are you protecting everyone against COVID-19?
Well, we're doing a lot of things since we reopened after the break for COVID. One of the things we're doing, obviously, is encouraging social distancing. We're doing that differently than most people who have blue or green lines on the floor. We're employing antique yardsticks, placing two together to show people that's a 6-foot distance and that's what you should observe. Even though those are antique, we're showing how you can do that today. We've installed plexiglass shielding in the proper places. When you come to the museum through any entrance, you're going to find plenty of access to hand sanitizer. We are welcoming and encouraging masks. We're not requiring those. And if you need one, we have some that we can give away as well. And so far, we seem to have had very little trouble. We're real pleased with the way things are working out so far.
Great. Well, we'll get right into it. The two exhibits, main exhibits here, are In Cold Blood, which is the Clutter Murders, and then the Flegel Gang. Could you talk to us a little bit about the In Cold Blood?
In Cold Blood was the title of a book by Truman Capote based on the murders of the four members of the Clutter family back in 1959. It was a terrible, horrendous murder, but it is a sad but true part of our history. And we focus in the True Crime exhibit on how the killers in the Clutter murders were brought to justice. And there are actual artifacts from the case that are here. One of those is a boot worn by one of the killers, Perry Smith, the night that the family was murdered in their home in November 1959. A footprint was left with that boot. And that linked the killers to the crime.
Okay.
We actually have that very boot still with the evidence tag on it, and that's on display. We have recently added something. We've added the judicial robe and the chair used by Judge Roland Tate at the time that Perry Smith and Richard Hickok were tried and convicted of those murders. And that came to us just recently. There are other elements from that particular case as well. We have the dress worn by Marie Dewey, wife of the lead investigator, at a ball given in New York City by Truman Capote after he published his novel In Cold Blood, based on the case here at Finney County. We're trying not to focus on lurid details of the crime. There's plenty of information on that. We're trying to focus on how a case that brought national attention to Finney County was solved by Southwest Kansas law enforcement personnel, and we hope that we're doing a decent job of displaying that.
Wonderful. Well, let's go into the Flegel Gang. A lot of people aren't aware of who the Flegel Gang is. Can you kind of tell us about them?
Yeah, people know about Bonnie and Clyde. They know about Babyface Nelson, John Dillinger, Al Capone, but they don't know so much about Jake and Ralph Flegel and their associates. Those are bank robbers, murderers, thieves who were based right here in Finney County. In fact, they still have descendants living here in Southwest Kansas who are fine, upstanding, law-abiding people, by the way. But Ralph and Jake and their associates were not. And they operated a little prior to some of the better known gangsters in the 30s, the 1930s. The Flegels really conducted about a 10-year spree of crimes in the 1920s. They are believed to have pulled off numerous train robberies. They are known to have conducted several bank robberies and some murders. And if it doesn't take too long, I'll tell you the quick story of how they were brought to justice.
We would love that.
Well, their final major job together included robbing the First National Bank in Lamar, Colorado, over the state line from Garden City, not that far. They did that in the late 1920s, and the robbery went really badly. because Mr. A.N. Parrish, the president of the bank, and his son Jaddo Parrish, who was also a bank officer, had their own firearms in the bank. When the Flegel gang came in with guns and told everybody to put their hands up, the two Parrishes pulled out their own guns, and there was a gunfight right inside the bank. Mr. Parrish and his son were both killed by the robbers. The robbers took two hostages, two tellers, and placed them on the running board of their getaway car as human shields to guard against being fired at by law enforcement. One of those tellers, who was a gentleman who had only one arm, survived. He was pushed off in a ditch. The other teller was murdered, and his body was dumped in a shed in Liberal, Kansas. In the firefight, though, one of the gang members had received a shot from the Parrishes that hit him in the jaw, and they needed a doctor's attention. So they drove up to Dighton, and they kidnapped a doctor who fixed up the jaw, and after he did the best he could, they shot and killed the doctor, put a shotgun to the back of his head. It was a brutal murder, put him in his car, and pushed him over the edge of a ravine in his 1928 Buick. Well, in the process of that murder, Jake Flegel did something stupid. He got a fingerprint on a window glass of the car. Fingerprint evidence was not unheard of then, but it was still fairly high-tech forensic evidence. Mm-hmm. And that led to the conviction of the gang. And we actually have that very car window in the exhibit here with fingerprint dust still on it.
That's amazing. And now I did read a book that you do carry in your...
Yes, we do, by Tom Betts over
exactly,
in
Portrayed by Fingerprint, is
yes,
that what it's called? And it did say that for a while this piece of glass was actually in Washington, D.C.
It was in Lamar for a while. It went to D.C. Where it belonged to the FBI, and then the FBI eventually donated it to the Finney County Museum, and here it is.
Now it's ours.
So it is here.
The other thing that I think is so phenomenal is that you actually were able to get a hold of some of the guns that were used by the Flegel gang.
Just in the past year, we've been able to add to the exhibit 8 firearms wielded by the gang. Now, people think of Thompson submachine guns with the round clip, things like that. These are fairly common firearms for the day, mostly. Some Winchester repeating rifles, some manually operated shotguns, one semi-automatic shotgun, and a couple of 38 caliber pistols. Here's how those guns, which are now on display, came to us. After the case was concluded, 3 of the gang members were executed in Colorado, and the 4th, Jake Flegel, was gunned down in kind of an ambush by law enforcement in Branson, Missouri. Law enforcement officers involved in the case were actually given some of the guns as souvenirs. It was a different era.
Yeah, you wouldn't have that happen today.
That would not happen today. But 8 of the firearms were actually given back to the family. They were given to a brother of Ralph and Jake named Walter Flegel. Walt Flegel had the guns the rest of his life. After his death, they passed to his daughter Eleanor. Eleanor Flegel, and we also have Eleanor's 1930 Model A Ford in the museum. Yeah. But Eleanor married a gentleman named Kenneth Hooker. Mr. Hooker sold the guns about 20 years ago to Charlie Norton. Now, a lot of people probably know Charlie Norton. He's a nationally known sculptor who does images of the American West. Yeah. Well, he lives in Southwest Kansas, and he approached us in April of 2019 and asked if we would like to have the guns. We were able to obtain the firearms. There was some cost involved. We got some support from Finney County CBD for that, and from 20 or more Southwest Kansas donors, and had a secure case built and obtained the firearms, and and they're now here and available for display. Now there's one interesting point. These are fairly common guns for their time. Like I said, shotguns, Winchester repeating rifles, 38 Special, but there's also a 1917 Army issue military rifle.
Oh, wow.
That wasn't a common gun that civilians would have, outlaws or not, either way. Well, at that time, banks were often keeping firearms on the premises to defend themselves against robbers. It's understood that sometimes the Flegels, when they would rob the bank and take the money, they'd just take the guns too.
Oh my.
And it's believed that this Army rifle was held by one of the banks that was robbed. And that rifle, became part of their arsenal, and it's now part of our collection here. And again, the Flegel gang, they were tough guys. They committed murders, they robbed banks, they stole money. They were not heroes, they were not good people at all. But we aren't really trying to focus on them being colorful, flamboyant characters. We're again focusing now on law enforcement in Southwest Kansas and also in Eastern Colorado, got together, used what was then some fairly modern technology for the time, and brought that gang to justice. And we hope people can see that when they come to see the true crime exhibit here at the museum.
That's great. So if you haven't been to the museum recently, this is a great time to come in and check out all the new exhibits that you have. There's also so much more that we're not even going to show you right now. What are your hours?
Well, we're open 1 to 5 p.m. 7 days a week as far as exhibits are concerned. Now, we have longer hours than that for our offices, 9 to 5 weekdays, but the exhibit galleries are open 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Sunday. So if you can't make it during the week, you can come during a weekend. And we're open well more than 300 days a year. So we just hope people will come. And we've seen a drop in visitors this year because of COVID and the fact that we were closed for 6 weeks. But it is starting to pick up again, so we hope people will come. In case you haven't been to the Finney County Museum, our exhibit entrance is right next door to the walk-through pedestrian arches at Lee Richardson Zoo, which themselves have some history, but that's another long story. So
if you're going to go to the zoo, stop off here first, learn a little bit about Finney County and all the wonderful things that we have, and then you can enjoy the rest of the day at the zoo.
We hope you do, and you'll see other exhibits while you're here. We have the Spirit of the Plains Gallery that covers the sweep of history going back thousands of years in Southwest Kansas. Our main exhibit gallery has a series of smaller exhibits that represent Garden City, Southwest Kansas, Finney County. Unfortunately, a couple of our more interactive items are our dress-up room and our Lego play area. You can still go in and visit. We don't have Legos or vintage clothing to try on at this time, again, because that's a COVID precaution.
Now, I go out and I talk about Finney County a lot, and I know this isn't probably one of your favorite things, but it is one of mine. In our museum, we have the world's largest hairball found in a cow's stomach. So if that's something that you're into, looking at weird, odd things, it is on display here, so you can definitely check that out. The museum itself is free to get in. They do have a donation, though, if you'd like to make a donation. So I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. I really appreciate it.
We're glad to share history with you, and we hope everyone else will come in and share as well.
Thank you so much.